This is the GamesIndustry.biz Microcast, recorded on Friday, the 26th of July, 2024. I'm James Batchelor, Editor-in-Chief of GamesIndustry.biz. Joining me once again is Head of GamesIndustry.biz, Chris Dring. Thank you so much for coming back.
I'd like to point out that you moved the time.
Yeah, I did. Yes,
I was shunned from last week's podcast. I didn't shun you, and I like the fact you replaced me with my former editor. It was
yes.
I replace him. That's the way it works. I guess that's what I'm doing this week.
There, so technically you're replacing him. We were working around the guest schedule because that's the polite thing to do, and also how you get a guest on. We've got quite a few stories to talk about this week. Like there's nothing like dramatically huge compared to like past microcasts, but there's been enough stories here that actually lend themselves to much larger discussions. So we'll start off with reports that came out earlier this week that Humble Games is shutting down. Now there's still a bit of confusion over this. Reports emerged that Humble Games is shutting down, all staff laid off. It was essentially just ceasing to be. Humble Games responded with a statement saying that it's not. It's a restructure. They are restructuring their operations. Now, the statement, as far as I can tell, didn't directly address layoffs. They just said, the usual thing, like challenging economic times, difficult decisions, we're restructuring, we need to make things more efficient, and so forth. Acutely aware of the profound impact this decision has on our team members, and deeply emphasised with everyone affected, without actually confirming that how people have been affected. This statement came out, and former Humble staff have still been saying, no, that's not what's happened. The report is that that all the operations have been passed over to a third-party group called the Powell Group, and the 36 plus employees who were working at Humble Games have gone. Do you want to say something, Chris?
Well, I mean, I understand that the statement that by the way, this is Humble Games are owned by a part of IGN Entertainment, which GamesIndustry.biz is as well. To caveat that we have no idea what's been going on, but I just wanted to make sure that that's been flagged.
We know nothing beyond the actual statement that has been released.
If Humble Games have laid off all their staff and have outsourced the remaining functions to other third-party businesses, that is still a restructure. I know that it's a very broad term that can mean many. Restructure could mean we've not laid anyone off, we've just put them into different roles. It could mean what it sounds like it means here. So although staff are trying to say they're being gaslit and this isn't true, and something, I think if by the letter of what they're saying, it is true. It's just what that means, what restructures mean, can drastically be different. But I have seen some of the comments about poor management decisions and stuff, and maybe there has been, but I think that if that's poor management decisions, then pretty much every publisher in the games industry, who have all gone through, it's a really hard time for games publishers. It's really hard time. It's a hard time for everybody. I think that's true. But you look at games publishers, you look at the games media as well, and you think about the roles that they play. These almost service organisations which connect groups together. A lot of the time, publishers are connecting people to agencies and things like that. And a lot of the time, media is all about connecting. I don't know why I'm relating this to the media, but the media is connecting people from games companies to the consumers and stuff like that. These are the things that, it's just a really challenging time, and Humble Games. So I think Humble Games, I think it probably is a restructure. I'm not surprised though, because we've seen, Private Division stories around that, what's going on there. We've seen teams, even last year we saw quite big cuts at Team 17. We've seen what's going on at Tiny Build. You see, it's spreading across the industry. You're looking at companies that are scaling back particularly big companies scaling back their third-party publishing efforts. And what I think is really difficult at the minute, it's really hard to predict a success. And if you look at the big games that have worked really well this year, did we see Helldivers coming? Did we see Power World coming? Did we see Balatro? Did we see these games coming? And we might have seen that there was some wish lists there, and there's some interest and chatter, and there's some optimism there. But I don't think we saw the level of success what happened. And there were other games that we thought, well, that's going to do all right, and that's going to be okay, and then it doesn't. It seems there's no real rhyme and reason at the moment. Somebody phrased it to me at Develop Brighton that games publishing is now about putting yourself in the best position to get lucky. And that's not a business model.
No, it really is luck. Like, to give you another example, so we ran a piece about a week or so ago on Grey Zone Warfare, and this is a tactical shooter, and it just happened to go into early access around the same time that Escape from Tarkov was having some backlash from fans because of the confusion over whether the new PvE mode was going to be paid for DLC or free DLC as they previously promised, and it just happened to be within the week Escape from Tarkov fans are disgruntled and looking for something now similar to play. Here's this other type, and that really took off. There's no kind of measurable way to prove that was the deciding factor, but I mean the game sold 900,000 early access copies within a month, and that. A large part of that could well be luck, but you couldn't go into this no, it's right, we're going to aim for this week because that's the point where one of our competitors is going to, out of the blue, piss off half their fan base.
Yeah, and it works both ways, right? Earlier in the year we talked about Immortals of Avium, right, which was a game that did really badly, and the journey on that game was, maybe this game could do, 500,000 units, 2 million units over the course of its lifetime, and maybe at launch it will do a couple 100,000, and that'll be pretty good. And then as you got closer, and as launch happened, they thought, maybe it's not a couple of 100,000, it's 100,000 units. And then it became, maybe it's 10,000 units. Okay, maybe it's less than 10,000. Right, and you're starting to see, and you think, how the hell has that happened? Even if I'm going to speak to other people, that's it's obvious, I don't think that was ever going to work, and blah blah blah. But I'm I don't think anyone predicted it would do that badly. And then there's also games that have done. Nobody. I mean, even Helldivers 2, and I think in the build up to it, we thought, this game might do all right. Maybe nobody was thinking that was going to be the fastest selling PlayStation published product in history, right? And these things are hard to predict. And if you're a publisher that hasn't found one of those games, you're in trouble. And you might have picked a really great game that might have done really well, and it didn't work. And in hindsight, you go, wonderful in hindsight, by the way. There's loads of stories on GI. You can also get it in Simon Carlos's newsletter. All these stories about how this game found an audience and succeeded. But then some other game will follow the same template and not. Yeah. And it feels really difficult. And in a market where there's less money, there's so much competition, and in things don't seem, you're looking at real trouble time. There are publishers that have done well, but you can always point to they've had a hit. That game did well for them. That game's done well for them. That's given them a bit of headway. And there are other publishers that have models that sort of work for them. I think, and we're also seeing a shift in publishing models. I don't know which companies are doing it, but there used to be a lot of publishers out there, like a Team 17, that's got a load of financing from themselves. They've got their own money, and they give that money to a developer, and the developer spends it and that sort of. But you're also seeing publishers that are almost connecting developers to money, and playing a sort of almost an agency role in that kind of funding relationship, and then they play and you're starting to see a lot of different business models sort of crop up around publishing, where that's de-risking things, but also it means the developers are having more direct access to where the financing is, and so you're starting to see a shift in that in certain ways, or at least people experimenting with those sort of things. But it's really tough at the minute. Publishers, they rely on games doing well. And they might put a lot of money and a lot of effort into a certain title that does an Immortals of Avium, and then you might find someone do a Balatro, right? And you're suddenly set, and it's that kind of inconsistency is really tough, and it is an inconsistent market. So I'm a little bit Humble Games closing. Here's the thing: Humble Bundle, from what I understand, is doing very well at the minute.
Yeah, they said they stressed in the statement there's no impact on the operations of Humble Bundle, so that will continue. And to be fair, Humble Bundle was always the core of that business. It was my understanding was it was because the bundle was doing so well and continues to do so well that they took some of that money and kind of invested it in this publishing arm, Humble Games.
There's less risk though in a retail business,
Yeah.
right? Basically, that's all about partnerships and investing in the tech to deliver the games and stuff like that. That's what that is, and there's not so much money. Whereas in publishing, you're spending money. And in a market where not many people are spending money, so it is tough. Here's the thing: I don't know all the answers to this. You probably can tell. I've spoken to publishers over the last couple of weeks, and they've all got different issues and different views on things. I'm going to explore it on GI. I'm going to be talking to a number of people, both who have recently left publishing and people who are still in publishing, to get an idea, guidance, on how things are progressing. Whether this is a temporary situation or if we're seeing a long-term downturn for the games publishing scene. It is an area of the industry that has shifted. You don't need a publisher anymore, and there are plenty of examples of games companies that just do it themselves now and are doing very well. But that's kind of always been the case for a little while. So we'll see what comes out of that. I'll have a slightly more educated opinion based on more conversations than the ones I've had so far. But yeah, I'm not surprised. I didn't know how well Humble Games was doing or not doing, but I'm not surprised to see a publisher like that deciding to give up, and so that and then I know they've got a couple of games coming out, and they're saying that Humble Games is continuing, but I wouldn't be surprised if once those games are out. I suspect it's a similar with Private Division, that once they've got their games out as well, it's probably curtains.
That's what I've been hearing from people. From we've had a couple of kind of anonymous sources claim to be past up, and a couple of them have saying this is just to kind of clear the remaining publishing deals, and then it'll be wound down completely. I'm going to pick up on what you just said, like like a publisher like that. It's not surprising to see a publisher like that closing down. This is a crucial thing. Like Humble Games is like so many of the companies you rattled off earlier. Team 17, Tiny Build, Private Division, all of these. They're all focused on that kind of indie but slightly higher budget indie space, trying to elevate those top tier indie titles. There are so many indie publishers at the moment. And since we joined GI, I feel like it's been at least every month. Sometimes there were periods where it was every week where a new publishing label has started. Like either a larger company like Take-Two has started its new a new label, Private Division, or a smaller company have started up something something like Kepler, something like Fellow Traveller, so forth, all these smaller ones. There are so many publishers looking for those next big indie hits, and while there are so many indies available, the number of games in the works, the number of games available to publish is more than it's ever been. The barriers to entry for developing a game are gone, but the number of games that publishers are willing to invest in because they believe it will be a hit, and that's not to besmirch indie games, but ultimately publishers are looking for ones that are going to be a hit. And some might take the portfolio stance of they'll take a few that might be a hit and hope that one of them is. But the number of games out there, just because the number of indie games out there is incredible, doesn't mean the number of potential hits are, particularly given how hit driven the market has become.
And it's harder to predict those hits, and and you're also getting situations where some of these companies don't have great identity. You look at a Devolver and you feel pretty confident they'll be all right. They might go through ups and downs, but they've got an identity and they've got a pipeline of games and they've got some good IP, and you feel relative. Even Team 17's. But you see some of the companies that did try and scale up, they sort of scaled back a little bit. You've seen Curve is a great example of a company that was going looking to float, or at least exit, and they got a load of investment and stuff like that, and they've sort of seemed to have scaled back a little bit to the sort of games that they were doing before. Just released Dungeons of Hinterberg, which I understand is great. So you're starting to see companies that sort of try to step out of that smaller indie game area, step a little bit back into it. And as for the companies that are trying to be a bit more ambitious, they've got an identity to them, or then perhaps they've got a model that works. I don't know what Kepler's model is, but it seems to be working, right? So, and Joe, I'm talking about, there's publishers struggling, but there one's doing really well. Kepler's one. We interviewed Blumhouse Games this month, and they're quite cool. I know they're a horror games thing, and they've got that model of low budget. They're not spending a lot of money on games, but they are giving those creators a lot more freedom. This is just the Blumhouse model, right? Low risk, but let's publish 7 games over the course of 2 years and see what happens, and all in the horror space. So it's I'm talking about Blumhouse as if they're successful. They haven't released a game yet, but everyone's trying different models and different identities and things, and I think
Yeah, well, that's true.
I think that's
I
interesting.
couldn't tell you what the identity of a humble game is. I couldn't name you a humble game.
Yeah.
I'm sure I could like press for time, but like off the top of my head, and that's a concern. But that's
They
a
did a
really
Hat in
hard
Time.
thing. Pardon? A Hat in Time.
A
Okay.
Hat in Time. That's the one. That's the one I've played.
Okay, that's
Right.
a really hard thing. Establishing an identity is a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
So
I'm
yeah,
not saying you need to. It's just
No,
you just
but-
you know. It's just
but it helps.
I don't think I don't. Yeah. Yeah. If you're at a game that everyone thinks, oh, that's a bankable hit, I don't. And there's lots of people knocking on the door of that game. I don't think that game's going to humble. But I don't know. I'm maybe being unfair. But it's certainly a tricky time for everybody, and it's true for publishers. And if you're humble and you've got, I know that they're two different divisions, but if you're humble and you've got a retail business that's going very, very well, and you've got a publishing business that's struggling, and you want to invest in the retail side, but and you don't have any money to do so, then maybe you cut from the publishing side in order to do it. But obviously it's brutal and it's horrible and it's miserable, as everything is at the minute.
It is. Speaking of misery, no. There's a few more stories we wanted to discuss. There was a couple of ones around AI this week, generative AI. So there were two stories like not directly related, but still kind of speak to the wider concern around Gen AI. That was kind of my clumsy segue to the misery, is like just how worried people are about Gen AI. The first one was that a number of former Activision staff spoke to Wired. Wired did a full investigation into how Activision is using generative AI tools. According to their sources, the publisher is reportedly using things like Midjourney and Stable Diffusion to produce things like concept art, marketing materials. That in itself isn't like kind of out of the blue, like or isn't kind of too shocking. Like I imagine a lot of companies are trying to use Gen AI tools to. I've got to stop saying Gen AI because clearly I can't manage to. Generative AI tools to create kind of the basis for things like concept art, marketing, things that they can build off. But the concern that was raised by the investigation was that Activision reportedly kind of assured staff that AI would not be used to replace the workers. That's not how it feels. Like shortly after the AI talks were, AI tools were greenlit, the company started. It was part of the Microsoft's 1900 gaming layoffs. 2D artists who would have specialised in concept art, marketing materials, and so forth. A lot of them were affected. Those who remained were, and I quote here, forced to use AI to aid their work, and they had to sign up for AI training. So there's a lot of concerns there about the use of AI generators within larger companies. I can see it both ways. I can absolutely see companies thinking these tools are for accelerating things, kind of giving you a basis to start from quicker that you can then add that kind of human creativity to. But equally, I can see if you're a human being in that position, that is taking away part of your role. That's taking away part of your job, and I can see the worry of being replaced by machines. So that was one part of the AI story.
Yeah, I think the AI conversation, we just kind of repeated a lot. We did a lot on GI Sprint, which I guess people who listen to the podcast might have heard a few of these, about the role of AI. And I've got it's a line that Sean Layden used in our interview. We've got to get the machines to do more of the work, and that's true. But I also, if you think about why AI is such a big thing for companies like Activision and Ubisoft and those sort of businesses in the development side, it's because video games are costing more and more to make. It's taking more and more staff, and they're taking longer and longer. So is there a way that we can, stop where we are, right? Is there a way we can get development times down to 3 and 4 years? And people use these metaphors which are a little bit clumsy, but they sort of get it. It's like swapping a screwdriver for a power tool, sort of thing. That's what these. And here's the thing: machine learning and AI tools and technologies in order to speed things up aren't anything new. The thing is, the reason why these games are taking so long to make and are requiring so many more people is because the demands of players, which we may have sort of set those expectations as an industry, demands of players are so high, and AI is not going to meet the demands of players. Right? AI recreates things based on what's happened.
Yeah.
Right? You're not pushing forward the boundaries of video games and what's capable by using things that that remix what's happened in the past. You've got to push forward. What AI should do, and this is what came out of GI Sprint, and I believe all these companies want to do, what AI should do is make things you don't need to push things forward. You don't need this to be better, right? It's not that important. It's those sort of things that they can use AI for, and a lot of that stuff's the boring work. And for our career, James, I think what we use AI for in games media, I don't use it enough, but maybe I should use it more, is in transcription.
Yeah.
Right? We're not looking to improve transcription. We don't need transcription to be better. we just need it to be faster. That would be great, and so we don't have to worry about it, and it saves us a lot of time. It's still not great, but it's that kind of thing that that AI should do. Where I feel, and the idea of AI being used to create in-game assets or music or whatever, or even create whole games, I'm like, well, they're not. I guess some sort of more, sort of dodgy, smaller businesses that can knock out a quick game using it. That's where things are perhaps a little worrying. But I think when it comes to those high-end video games, they're always going to want to have a human element to it. And I don't think we're looking at losing staff here. I think we're talking about not growing AAA teams.
Star 7 said it like a year or so ago. It's like, you're never going to get someone to type into an AI tool, make a better Grand Theft Auto, and it produce one. Like, that's not where this technology's going.
You might be able to, in a dream future, you couldn't do it now, but make me a Grand Theft Auto, and it could make you a Grand Theft Auto game. But it's not going to make you a better one that the people can make. And AAA game development is always about being better. It's why costs are going up so much. However, where I think there is a grey area is when we use AI for things that beforehand we wouldn't have done, but you don't really need anything other than AI to do it. And I think you hit upon it there. If you're internally making a pitch document to take to publishers, or a pitch document to pitch to your boss, sort of thing, do you sit there and go, oh, I need something to illustrate this? And you go, I could sit there and ask the artists to spend a couple of days to mock me up a little design, which is what we would have done 5 years ago. Nowadays, you can use AI to make it. And that kind of thing, why would you waste the time of a designer to design something that no one's going to see outside of a few execs in a boardroom, which is only designed to illustrate something? You're not trying to create something that people will buy. You're not trying to create something that's going to promote something. You're trying to create something that's just going to be used internally. But that is a job that artists would have done before. So you are taking away some work there. And that, I'm not saying that would necessarily result in redundancies, but it certainly might reduce the amount of artists you would need in the future. And so that's where I think there's a little bit of a grey area. You can understand why companies that are having a hard time having to lay people off and costs are going up might be going, I can't keep hiring artists, so that some of this job work that you do, you're going to have to use AI to do, which is, I suspect, what's happening at Activision. I suspect it's a case of, to these artists, that for all the stuff that we're using, which doesn't need mock-ups and everything like that. It's not. We don't need you can use an AI's tools for it. But at the same time, the industry's in the situation it's in, and AI is a way out of it. It's just we need to, where's the line? And that is I don't know. But
I think I think that's the line that some companies are going to blur, and
people have different perceptions on it, right?
Yeah.
I'm sitting there going, I think it's probably okay to use AI. The amount of times we want to do something, I'm putting together a internal presentation. I want someone to go over the bits, and I email a designer so I can get back to you in a week. And I'm like, I could just do it in 5 minutes. Yeah. There's certain things where it's like, and I'm sitting there because I want to get on with my job, and so then you can understand where those sort of frustrations, why those sort of things might happen. But then there's other things like with the SAG After AI thing, right? And I don't really know what this is about, really. I don't know exactly what the sticking points are in their discussions. But if it's you can see that for companies going, if we've done a load of recording of voices, and I don't know, the line's not quite right, or we want to change a line slightly or whatever, could we use AI to sort of fix that line? I don't know. I'm making this up, but so to a games company, that's reasonable. We've paid the money, we've done all the work. We don't want. There's no point in getting them back into the recording studio and going through the whole process again. Let's just use AI to tweak it. And that maybe, I don't know if this is the case, by the way, but maybe the unions are going, no, that's not right. You can see actually why you can see hear both sides of that argument, and you completely get it. right? And and that's where we're going to have to work it out as an industry, amongst employees, amongst companies, amongst where we feel comfortable, and meet somewhere in the middle. But it's going to be an ongoing thing, and AI is such a broad top. It's it covers so many areas.
It does, yeah. Like this is the thing. A lot of people just use the word AI, not even generative AI, just AI, and that just covers so many different things. But even generative AI does. But yeah, like the SAG-AFTRA thing, just kind of add some bit of clarity on that. Or just some context. The SAG-AFTRA union has officially gone on strike with voice actors because after a year and a half of negotiations with the various games companies that negotiate with this union, they have not reached an agreement on how to protect voice actors from AI or from the use of AI. And you're right, like I'm not the same as you. I'm not as familiar with the exact specifics of what they're concerned about. I think it is partly, like you say, like concerns that rather than bringing in the artist again to re-record lines and do different takes. Using AI to tweak them. I think it's also what AI can do is quite terrifying in terms of, as a cheesy example, but it's a fairly mainstream one. Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Disney Plus series, where they used AI, or they used some sort of technology to map James Earl Jones's voice tones onto Hayden Christensen when he is Darth Vader. So James Earl Jones didn't record a single line for that series, but it is his voice throughout, and he has given them the rights to use his voice for the character of Darth Vader. I think that's different because he has given consent. I think that's what the union's after, is like it needs to be absolutely concrete consent rather than, well, you've recorded
let's be
this
clear,
character.
That was awesome. Right?
Oh, it was brilliant.
That was the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, love it or not. That bit was cool.
Yeah, it was. But I can see from the acting,
absolutely.
A random example, everyone loves Asterion from Baldur's Gate 3. I can absolutely see the actor for that not wanting them to if Larian suddenly make loads of DLC with Asterion, I want to be recording those lines, not the computer producing them. There's so much concern about what AI might be used for, and that's what people are trying to protect from. But there is a slight tangent. There is so much pressure there's a weird pressure to use AI. Like as you said, we use it in our day to day in certain tasks, and we decide where that line is as to what we do and don't do. But slight tangent, but it's relevant. I listen to a lot of writing podcasts. One of the ones I was listening to recently, they were talking about the use of AI, and independent authors use these to write the blurb, write a summary of the story, write a layout, those sort of things. Like you said, the sort of the pitch stuff that takes time to do, or perhaps people aren't too comfortable with it. They're not using it to write a whole book. They're just using it to expand certain things or get ideas. And the experts who were on this podcast, they literally said, you're going to be you can have as many kind of qualms about AI as you want, and that's understandable. But if you don't use it, you are going to be left behind. And I think that's the pressure that's probably facing companies like Activision. Is Gen AI has rocketed up in the last 2 years in terms of what it can do, what it's being used, how prominently it's being used. And there is that fear of being left behind and not being these companies need to be kind of cut, at least seen as the cutting edge. And I can see why there's pressure. Look, if other people are using this, we need to look into how we can.
And what I will say though, you do need the experts in order for the AI tools to work.
Yes,
that's the thing. You can sit there and go, you can use AI tools to probably write a news story on GI. Probably not, but I've never tried it, but you probably could. Because news stories have a structure to it in a certain way, but they're not going to be able to put the context in. They're not going to be able to put. And if let's say we get into the future where we are, I don't think we ever will. I don't understand why you would. It doesn't take that long. But if you are using AI to write a news story, you'd still need the human being to go, yes, but this isn't working how it needs to work. We need to tweak the.
Prime example. I don't mean to interrupt, but prime example. Because I was talking with this someone at Brighton, I think. We would never use AI to rewrite a press release into a news story, because the AI will just take the press release verbatim. So all those quotes that people add in, talking up this news as the greatest thing ever, we kind of filter that out. Naturally, as journalists, we know to kind of filter out the guff,
we might spot something in that press release that's more interesting than the press release.
Yeah.
And we might, and here's the thing, when you talk about news and how people report news, if you go on the BBC website, every major story is a live feed, and they're feeding in tweets and viewpoints and stuff like that into a thing, and they're giving you live, and they're keeping updated and stuff like that. AI can't do that. AI can help you do it, but it's not. It can't be the editorial creator deciding what is interesting, what is, it's kind of. But anyway, we're going off. We could do an entire series on AI.
We probably
but
could.
I'm not too concerned about it myself. I think it's actually an exciting opportunity for anyone. But I can understand there being, in the market at the moment where loads of people are being laid off. But I think AI is actually a way to stabilise the industry's spiraling costs, and it will get to a point where we can start delivering growth again, and growth will result in it's that will result in more jobs, and so it's just ultimately, if AI working where we're making games faster, and we're making games and we're able to, we're not spending 6 years making a AAA game, which makes everything risk averse, and we can be a little bit we can take a few more risks as an industry, which means we might be able to discover new genres and reach new audiences, which means we're bringing in new people, we're growing the business that way, and it creates a more vibrant industry. That's what we want AI to deliver, right? We just want to make sure that it does it in a way that's not harmful to the creative process and the people that are involved in it.
And on that optimistic note, I am going to wrap us up, because we are definitely in danger of going over. Our recording platform claims we've been on for 30 minutes, but last time it told me 25 minutes, and we'd actually been recording for 40. So apologies now if this is a slightly longer microcast. Before we go, just a quick kind of a tease, as it were. There's going to be some changes to the microcast in the next coming weeks. We are working on improving the overall quality, the structure. We've got new equipment, or rather I have. Yours is still somewhere in transit. We've got new equipment that we're going to try and use, and we're going to try and improve the overall process of how we make this microcast to make it a kind of a better delivery.
We're delighted people like it. We don't put as much thought into it as I think people think we do.
Well, that thought is now coming. So.
Yeah, but the our new owners, IGN, they like it, and they want us to do, and they're giving us the ability to do some cool new things to it. So yeah, a couple of weeks things might sound a little better, and there might be a bit more structure to it, and stuff like that. But yeah, it's going to be, we take a step up in the microcast. It'll still be me and James waffling on, maybe a few more guests as well. But look forward to that, and we'll be also planning a few specials around Gamescom as well. It's be quite cool.
In the meantime, you can find previous waffle from me and Chris on the GamesIndustry.biz podcast feed. That's available on any podcasting platform of your choice, and the microcast is also available as a video on the YouTube channel for GamesIndustry.biz. You can get more news, insight and analysis into the world behind video games at GamesIndustry.biz, and we will see you next week. Thank you so much for joining us.